Moving on to our next speaker, who is Dr. Meenal Viz, who some of you may know because she was the creator of our Upfront TikTok. And and she's also been on the cover of Vogue for her work in activism. You see Kim and Lauren going crazy. For her work in activism and taking the march to 10 Downing Street when she was 6 months pregnant to protest against PPE during the pandemic. So, Meenal, welcome back, is what I should really say.
Go Meenal.
Thank you, Hayley, for having me, and thank you, Lauren, for arranging this. I've never been introduced as a TikToker, so that's a new thing for me. No, thank you for the lovely introduction, and thank you for having me again. And thank you to all the incredible women who've just spoken. I've been writing notes as well, and I can't wait to connect with you all. So I know I just have 7 minutes, and I have my baby on my lap. So if she wakes up, I'm sorry. So I'm going to jump straight into it. So as Hayley had mentioned, in April 2020, so almost 2 years ago, I held a one-woman protest outside Downing Street. And Jazz was just talking about empowered decisions, but I didn't know I was making any of this until Jazz has actually spoken about it, and it's made me reflect on that. But today I want to talk a little bit about the role our privilege plays in our activism. And I've been reflecting on that over the last couple of years because I haven't been able to point my finger on why it was so difficult for me. So as I share my story, I hope you can reflect with me and we can learn together. So most of you probably know the story about why I protested, but if I put it in a nutshell, I was just angry. I was very angry at the system that led to the death of so many healthcare workers, and angry that we were threatened, that if we spoke up, there'd be consequences. We were trying to save lives. We were trying to save the public. And very angry that our leaders were getting away with literally blood on their hands. People were dying and they were shoving all responsibilities. And I would walk into the hospital and I'd see body bags piling up because there was just no room in the crematorium. I'd come home every day, turn the news on, and I'd see the statistics going up. The issue I had was that there was no story behind each statistic. Each death mattered. There was a family behind that statistic grieving. So why weren't we doing anything about it? And who was to be held accountable? Who do we hold responsible? Is it the doctors? Is it the NHS leaders? Is it our politicians? Nobody wanted to take responsibility. So I decided to use the internet to speak up and raise my concerns. And I was on Twitter and social media, slowly speaking up about these things. And I got emails and threats from my communications managers. I'm laughing only because now that I think about it, how crazy it is that in the middle of a pandemic, dealing with the coronavirus, instead of doing that, people were actually tracing my social media. And I got called one night, I remember, saying that if I carried on, I'd be penalized and I could lose my job and my medical license, which is the worst thing any doctor can hear. I spent 6 years studying to be a doctor, and all the money that went into that, all the sacrifices that went into that, I didn't want to lose my medical license. So guess what? This made me more angry and I was furious. Before I carry on, I just realized I didn't mention I was 6 months pregnant at that time. So I wanted to make sure that everything I did wasn't just for me, but for a better world for my daughter as well. And that's when the idea to protest came about. And, when you look at that photo of me outside Downing Street, a lot of you just think, oh, she wrote a placard and she stood outside Downing Street for 2 hours. Actually, there was a lot more that went into that protest, a lot more that went behind it. And I want to talk about that today, because as I was planning my protest, there were a few things running through my mind. Obviously, the aspect of me potentially losing my job. I remember writing my husband's phone number under my scrub top because I thought I could get arrested. All of these things were kind of like minor. I was like, yeah, I'll deal with it when it happens. The biggest issue for me was, how do I tell my family? How do I explain that I'm going to take a huge step that could potentially destroy my career or actually make my career? I didn't know what was going to happen, but I just knew it was the right thing to do. And at this point, nobody from my extended family knew that I was pregnant. So I knew that at some point, some major news outlet would cover the story, my face would be plastered all over the internet, and people would find out that I was pregnant. So usually when we're in situations like this, you go to YouTube or you read a book, or you try to find something to inspire you, to actually give you that boost and that moral boost to go out and do what you believe in. But I couldn't do that. Who could I have looked up to? I've never seen a South Asian pregnant woman who stood up to the British establishment. I've never heard a story like that. And I very rarely read the stories about the emotional burden that comes along with taking these big decisions in your life and owning your decisions. Because I knew that this would have a ripple effect, not just on me, but my whole family. But as I said, I had to put it to the side because I knew what I had to do was urgent and it was a matter of life and death. So I just called my parents. I said, look, I'm going to go out and protest. We're not allowed to discuss this. And I just went and I did it. They disagreed. I told my in-laws, they disagreed. I told my husband, but he was on my side. And that for me was enough. In fact, even if he said no, I probably would have done it anyway. But now, of course, I've protested and I went viral on the internet. And that day, my life changed forever in many ways. Of course, one way was that people knew who I was and I had a platform to speak up. But that's a different story. My whole family were against what I did. Everybody hated the idea that as a pregnant woman, I was outside Downing Street showing up against the British establishment. I received phone calls from my extended family. I say extended family, but my aunts and my uncles from India saying why I'd brought shame to the family. I received phone calls from family members who I was very, very close to, who I shared my heart with. I told them everything about my life. And they went to the extent of calling me Hitler, saying, you are an extremist. And everybody was very ashamed of being associated with me. You know, everybody had that blanket of shame on me saying, we don't want to know anything about what she's doing. Now, just imagine, I protested and I was pregnant, and that could have created so much positive change. All I wanted was people to say, Meenal, look, we might not understand what you're doing, but we're on your side and whatever support you need will help you. But instead I was dealing with all of this negativity. And I question this all the time. Would that have happened if I came from a different background? Would that have happened if my family were second generation Indians, or British Asians, or third generation British Asians? Maybe, I don't know for sure. But when I speak to other fellow activists and I hear about the incredible support they have from their family, part of me does wish I had that. A part of me wishes that was part of my story and that was part of my narrative, because perhaps I would have had a lot more confidence to do what I did and own my story and have confidence and have that power within me to continue doing what I was doing. Because everything that I was doing, there was a big gray cloud hanging over me with a lot of doubt and a lot of worry about what would happen and what the consequences would be. Over the next few months, I took the government to the High Court and I changed the law on national policies, which meant that ethnic minority groups are better protected now, and especially pregnant women as well in the healthcare force were told to go home because it was now made illegal for us to be working in these high-risk environments. And the day I announced my win, I didn't receive a single phone call from a family member. You think this would be something to celebrate. Only people who called were my parents, but I think my parents at this point were just like, look, we just have to support you. If not, we've got no other choice. But I was being accused of being a bad mother, for spending time giving media interviews instead of being with my baby and feeding her and taking care of the home. But I had to absorb it like a sponge because I had to put it on the back burner and continue my work because I could see the momentum that everything was gaining. Now, 2 years on, I've realized how incredibly difficult that period was for me. And I've only had the courage to speak about it now because people like Lauren, people like Hayley, people from up front have given me that courage to own my story. And I just want to end on one point. And that is, I am not running the same race as you. You are not running the same race as me. We're all running individual races. And this is not the same 100 meters that we're all competing each other against with. I am carrying thousands of years of cultural expectations. And this burden weighs a heavy weight on my shoulders. And this slowed me down significantly. But I didn't allow it to, and I hope it doesn't allow you to either. So when we think about creating change or the activists around us, please take a moment to learn about them. So much more behind that one headline you see on BBC or on the TV. Don't just celebrate their big wins, but their courage to speak up and their courage to go against all the odds to achieve their goals. And it will take, I know it will take years and perhaps generations to reduce this weight. But the only thing I can hope for is that I reduce the weight even just a little bit and make that load a little bit lighter for my daughter and for all our daughters and sons in the future so that when we pass the baton on to them, they have courage to own their story. So thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Hayley.
Oh, thank you, Meenal. That was amazing. I'm taking away the fact that you said we're not all running the same race. It's true. There are so many generational, cultural things that people don't consider that are on top of people that aren't white. I know that Meenal constantly has great podcasts that she shares through Meenal's World, which is on every great podcast platform. And I think we already shared the link, but there it is. Thanks, Kim. So if you want to hear more from Meenal, follow the link.